Thanks for listening to Make Sense with Jason and Holly Petersen. We're a husband and wife team who are trying to help you, the consumer, make sense out of the world of digital marketing and communication and the tools that go along with it, like social media, video, tech, and beyond. We own a digital marketing company called GenR8 Marketing and specialize in small business, but also consult, teach, and help people stay informed and on top of the latest developments in the tech, marketing, and communication industry. So thanks for joining us for this episode. We're on the cusp of a new year, so we've got maybe some topics that could be relevant going into 2024. One of the things we're going to be talking about today are some of the tech trends that we're looking at for 2024, specifically for small businesses, things that small businesses can take advantage of. And then Jason is also going to be talking about kids getting tech for Christmas, because we all know whether it's like a virtual reality headset to their first iPhone or something along those lines, that is a pretty big deal to get for Christmas. And so we just want to help parents maybe have some tools and things like that, understand their security options as well, and how they can kind of cut some of that stuff off if they need to after certain times, or monitor some of the browsing history, or even limit browsing history in some of those apps and things like that they could get into that perhaps they should not.
Correct. Yeah. A lot of it we'll talk about is just some family safety. There's a lot that has improved over the years as it relates to access of all digital content on devices. So yeah, I'll kind of go through and try to unpack that a little bit for the listeners.
So, Jason, actually, I'm going to have you start with that just today, simply because that's probably going to be at the top of a lot of parents, even grandparents, agendas as far as like, okay, we really need to get this under control here and make sure that going into this, that we've got, a clear understanding of what our options are. So you just dive right in.
Okay. So I think this is something that has tremendously improved over the last, I would say, 5 years. We've been in sort of a catch-up mode for the last probably 15 as it related to social media. iPhones, of course, becoming sort of the standard, and Android phones, smartphones. And kids, of course, now using the internet in a variety of fashions, as well as all different types of technology. So this is something I know that can be really intimidating for people because it's changed so quickly, and they're just trying to figure out, do I buy my kid an iPhone or an Android, or if I've got, everybody has a laptop. Obviously, the kids have Chromebooks in many cases from the schools. So again, I just kind of wanted to go through a little bit as far as it relates to the devices, as well as even just the way the internet is set up at your house. So we'll kind of start first with the internet. So for most of the listeners, probably they have some sort of internet connection that comes into their home. In many cases, it could be Allo, it could be Time Warner. So it's a lot of times coming into your house, and for most, they're usually plugging in call it a Wi-Fi router, which then broadcasts the internet throughout your house. And they have some pretty good wizards to set this up. Now, a lot of these products, whether it's, say, Linksys or Netgear, or even Google has products for the Wi-Fi, they do include some content filtering. So I think the term they're using is digital content filtering. So there are some family packages or services. Sometimes it's a subscription, but you can go ahead and activate that. I would say it's totally worth it. I mean, in terms of the difficulty, I'd probably rate it at around 6th grade level. It's not super complicated, but I really would recommend, again, given that the internet is so vast and there's a lot of great stuff, but you can get into a lot of stuff the kids probably shouldn't.
So when they activate that, what does that do?
Well, then it, by default, if you are using the internet or browsing, and based on the type of topic they may be searching for or looking for, you have the control over what would be blocked.
Got it.
So the school does this already. Again, for most of LPS, they use Chromebooks. So that's already kind of baked into that, which is why, honestly, they're using Chromebooks as well, is because it allows them to control the environment for what kids can get access to.
Sure.
So that's kind of the baseline. I start there because, regardless if you have a smartphone or not, most of the kids and family members and teenagers and so forth usually have a laptop as well. So start there. How can I add a kind of monitoring system? There's all kinds of products. I mean, we can maybe unpack that later on if the listeners want me to do that. But just generally speaking, when you have your internet set up and you have your Wi-Fi set up in your house, go ahead and do a Google search, check into it to see if it has a family service that you can turn on that ultimately monitors. Eventually, you can even make it so that it's designated just to a specific device that your kid uses. So you have very good control.
Or maybe a specific problem child in your house.
Correct. So if one kid is abusing the privilege, the other is not. So again, I think I don't like to think of it as Big Brother, but the reality is we live in an era where we need to be responsible about what kids access. And you and I did not grow up in this era. I mean, we grew up with encyclopedias. We talk about this all the time. So the internet is wonderful. But again, like everything, there is a responsibility given that I think a lot of people, not intentionally, they take for granted of how important it is to provide content filtering and safety.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
well, and I think that sometimes we take for granted how clever our children are.
Exactly. And that is the bottom line. I mean, usually where there's a will, there's a way. So you have to be intentional and diligent. I tell, when I am on the radio with Jack and we talk, it's so important, regardless of whether you like this or not, whether this annoys you, we just can't stick our heads in the sand. It's just so important that, change has occurred. It is what it is. And we need to do a good job on our part as parents to help make sure that we're providing a safe environment for how they access and use the internet.
And don't underestimate just having the conversation as well. Say, hey, this isn't a sneak attack, but just so you know, I do have restrictions, or I am monitoring or will be monitoring kind of that content that you're taking in. And if we find that we need to put anything in place, we can either do that, or perhaps you will lose privileges, etc. This isn't something where, I think from a responsibility standpoint, it's meant to spy. It's more of like you said, it's like we need to be responsible, just like we're teaching them about life, that, this is kind of part of that. And growing up with tech, it all goes hand in hand.
Yeah, I think Parenting 101 is providing guardrails and appropriate boundaries. So it's a good thing. I know for us, right now, if there's a big trend, before I dive into the smartphone sort of parameters, is YouTube is consumed extensively by kids right now in the, say, younger Gen Z, and especially the alpha generation, where our kids kind of crisscross. So one of the greatest things you can do, in my opinion, is have the paid YouTube subscription. It's cheap. It allows you as a parent to have comprehensive knowledge of what is being accessed. And for us, I participate. Do I want to watch everything? No. But I always know which content they're subscribing to, and I always am able to see what our kids are getting as far as suggested videos. So we're really, really careful about that. So again, you have to take an active role. Like I said, it doesn't mean you got to geek out, but see what your kids are watching. Like I said, this is that whole thing where you just can't just assume that they're not going to be watching things they shouldn't. So always take an active role. But I think one of the things I would say that's outside of the whole content filtering is YouTube. And if you want to know what your kids are watching, go in and sit with them and see what the subscriptions are. And again, educate. I think that's the idea, is that we're trying to teach them to use this in a responsible fashion. So that's, I think, a tip right there that's sort of kind of on the outside parameters of just the internet, but is used like crazy with that generation.
Absolutely.
So let's go ahead and unpack now the smartphone. So clearly, if there's anything that has gone crazy, is kids and ages of when they have a smartphone. Even for us, and I'm not here to criticize how other parents handle things, but we were very, very, I would say, cautious in how we went about having our kids have access to a smartphone. So, with us and our daughter, we started off with a flip phone. So we started off with just some basic, like 101. Dumb flip phone, pay as you go.
Emergencies.
Yep. Now, for a lot of families like us, we don't have a landline. So for us, it's inevitably important that the kids have a phone that they can use. So about maybe a year and a half ago, we made the plunge. We've got kids in middle school where we made the choice to go ahead and get them an iPhone. And a lot of these same things apply to Android too, which I'll kind of talk about. So the great thing about specifically the iPhone, their family controls are amazing. They are so good. I am so impressed because, generally speaking, Apple's really good at making complicated things easy for people. So if you have an iPhone as a parent, there are ways in which you obviously add your kids to your family, okay? And then once they are part of your group, then you have a option under settings called screen time. And then you can go in and basically control every sort of appropriate level of content they access. Now, for me personally, I've been a fan of paying for the kind of monthly Apple services as it relates to content and so forth and backup and things like that. And by spending a little bit monthly, all of a sudden now I can have them all included. So we're all four under one umbrella. I think that's really smart. It costs a few dollars more. It's like a cup of coffee more a month. But that's really the thing you want to do is have it all governed under one Apple user ID.
So is that something that they set up with their account at Verizon, or how does someone go about doing that?
So that's actually on the iPhone. So for the parents, in many cases, I would recommend the parent and the kids having the same type of phone. It's much more complicated and difficult. Let's say like a parent has an iPhone and the kids have an Android. If you really want this to be seamless and simple, if you're an Android family, then everybody should have Android. If you're an iPhone family, everybody should have iPhone. Parents may not like hearing that, but if you don't, it makes it a lot more difficult to manage and monitor things. So if everybody has the same platform, and again, I'm using the iPhone for example, because that's what we do, I was able to take these phones that, let's keep this in mind. Smartphones today are like more powerful than computers 10 years ago. It's insane. Most people don't realize that, but they are literally a little mini supercomputer in your hand. And as a result of that, it is a Swiss Army knife to no end. It can do so much. And I think people tend to trivialize just how much can be done, how much you can do.
And access.
Mm-hmm. So, at the end of the day, that's great. We're going to have our Wi-Fi filtering on for kids as far as content filtering, but most phones have cell. So when they're not on the Wi-Fi, they can access whatever they want.
When they leave the house.
Exactly. So if you are under basically one Apple ID that is the payment for the family plan, then now I can then monitor and manage the screen time and all the permissions and settings for our kids. So, for example, like as Trevor, who's a little younger, our son, was starting to use his, it was a little more limited. It was more of a flip phone. I could honestly basically make it just as a phone and texting to people we approved, and that was it. And then as it's changed, I've added a little bit more. I make it so that like essentially the phone is inoperable after 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. with few exceptions. And then if he wants permission, I have to then enter in a code or I approve it from my phone if they're able to do that. So,
and what that looks like is a push notification that comes through to the person who kind of is in charge or monitoring the account.
To the adult, right.
So Jason and I get a push notification, and whichever one of us approves it or disapproves it, we can interact in that way.
Yep. So I think that, and this is another thing I'd recommend, again, parents, you do you, it's up to you, but I believe that it's a good idea to not have the phones be in the kids' rooms overnight. I would recommend, because if you've got it charged and it's charged separately, again, then it's offline. It's just kind of one of those things where you check in it at night. But let's just say, for sake of discussion, they grab the phone in the middle of the night because they want to do stuff. Well, everything's shut off. So again, it puts in, like I said, appropriate boundaries and guardrails, right? You're going to have some kids that abuse this more than others. So you can literally customize these settings per kid, per individual, based on what you feel is appropriate. And again, as they get older, you can maybe change the settings, so forth and things. And I've already been doing that. So again, Android has a very similar situation, just like iOS or the iPhones. So I've been really, really pleased and happy with just how, as we have entered into the era of having teenagers, how do we go about this responsible use of using technology and specifically smartphones? And it's been incredible. So I feel bad for the parents 10 years ago because this didn't exist. But in this day and age, again, it takes, it requires the parent to just do a little bit of investigation and check it out. But for the most part, the simplest way to do it is go to the settings under screen time. And then you can start to go through the process of adding your kids, other family members, and then set it however you want. It's like if they have access to Apple Music, we could make it so that it's only for content that is not parental advisory, right? Mm-hmm. Or for television shows or for podcasts, anything. It just allows you to put in some checks and balances there. So needless to say, that's kind of, I'd say, the two components. You can do this either with Android or you can do this with iOS. The other thing to be mindful of is both the Mac, basically laptops, as well as Windows laptops also have the family settings. Now, if you happen to be a family that has all Mac devices, these same permissions apply to a MacBook. A lot of people, like we have a lot of Windows laptops. Windows has a family thing as well. So bottom line is this is available now to everyone in every platform your family may use. It just takes a few extra steps to do it. So I think as listeners hear this, if they have more questions, we're more than willing to provide additional information. But just as a recap, watch your Wi-Fi, install some basic content filtering that's usually provided, and then be looking at the individual devices. Get on those family plans. Make sure, again, that you've got it set up where you're comfortable with what your kids are going to access.
I would say, too, that from a resource standpoint, these are easy kind of Google answers. So if people needed to get some extra nitty-gritty information about this or they needed a step-by-step, that is something that you can Google depending on your carrier or who you're using. You can even walk into one of your carrier stores and maybe have someone on hand on the floor actually help you out, show you how to access that if you'd like to do that. I think one question, Jason, I have, what about those kiddos who got gaming things? So like say you've got a VR set or say you got a new Switch or what have you. Is there chat limitations or is there ability for parents to keep an eye on that and set security limits for those kinds of things too?
Yeah, so I don't believe, and the listeners can correct me if I'm wrong, but like our kids have a Nintendo Switch, you can control the interaction as far as chatting or adding friends. That's all completely controlled, and you can do that. Same with Xbox, those kinds of things, PlayStation. As far as limiting the amount of time you spend on a Switch, I don't think they have that, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. Now, Android and iOS do a lot of gaming, so those it does. Like you can prevent that. But I do know for those that use like an Xbox or Switch or PlayStation, it has it so you can create parameters on how your kids would be able to interact with other gamers online.
Sure. Great. Perfect. Well, let's move on to our second topic here for this episode, and that's kind of talking and looking at some of the trends for 2024, specifically for small businesses. These are kind of upcoming tech, current tech that's getting perfected, that are excellent tools for small businesses maybe to tap into or start to look into using. The first one that we're going to talk about today is e-commerce. And when I say e-commerce, I don't necessarily mean it in the traditional sense. E-commerce, specifically as we're talking about today, is going to be geared more toward how you're advertising your e-commerce availability with your business. For those who have been on the fence or maybe haven't explored looking at e-commerce marketing specifically for their business within the various social media platforms, it is something that you really want to consider. All of these statistics recently, I would say even over the last 2 years, especially with the pandemic, have really thrown people online who maybe were not doing it before. It kind of forced the issue. And as a result of that, the tech involved with e-commerce and specifically marketing that e-commerce within those social media platforms has become huge. A lot of those demographics, and again, we highly recommend that if you don't know who your demographics are, that you find those stats and locate those and get a good handle on that, because that's going to tell you a story. If you don't know how to do that, there are resources online. Those are things that you can Google too, and different ways that you can look for those stats. One of those things is Google Analytics that you can look on the back end of to get some demographic information and how your users are interacting on your website. But circling back to the social media idea between Meta, so that would be Facebook and Instagram, between TikTok, LinkedIn has some advertising. Jason and I both feel that it needs some work, but that is an option. So that's something that you can explore too. Obviously, Twitter, which is not known as Twitter now, it's X. Clearly, there's options there too if that's something that you want to explore. But A lot of e-commerce sales now are coming from social media feed advertising. It's an opportunity to advertise very specific product, services, etc., and that it can address a very targeted demographic. So that is vetted marketing straight at your fingertips that you can send directly to your audience. If you need help with that, feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to have those conversations. There are tools at your fingertips that you can Google and get those resources available in step-by-step instructions. Okay. Next topic for trends for small business is remote work is not going anywhere. There's lots of businesses, large and small, that have noticed that not only are they getting high quality work out of their remote workers, but their overhead has gone down overall. This means less office space. This means more flexibility as far as time for not only them, but their employees as well. And even that flexibility that extending over into the customer service aspect of what they can provide. So perhaps you have a rolling situation where you have remote workers who are starting earlier because they would like to get off earlier in the day. So they have an earlier morning start. You have late morning starters so they can go into the evening. Just kind of this nice benefit that people are able to tap into by working remotely. One of the other things from a retail standpoint, okay, what's the solution there? What happened to some of those businesses who perhaps closed down during the pandemic because they just couldn't keep their brick and mortar going? Well, we're starting to see a trend in pop-ups. It allows not only that lower overhead cost or no overhead cost, but it allows flexibility as far as what kind of inventory they need to stock, how often they need to stock it, what they're spending on it, and they can be very specific in their location and how they're utilizing those spaces. It could be a situation where they have it open for a month. Maybe they have it open for half a day, and they're part of some sort of fair or walkthrough scenario, open house, etc. So again, remote work isn't going anywhere. The tools, the equipment, nice, smooth transition from the pandemic. So I don't know. Maybe we can thank the pandemic for that.
Well, I think if there's anything, I would say a positive that came out of that horrible situation was people valued the time with their families. And I think
or even just the personal time they got back.
Absolutely. So we've always, I think, in just this progression where flexibility is something I think that's imperative for families. And in many cases, most families have both mom and dad, are working. And as a result of that, it's complicated. So I think as companies embrace a results-oriented culture, flexible culture, because now the technology exists for people to work remotely, obviously you can have these hybrid situations. And I know for us, we've really benefited from that as well, is flexibility is a huge thing in terms of, I'd say, part of your employee retention strategy. So that doesn't mean you just eliminate the brick and mortar in some cases, but I would definitely look at this as a trend to embrace as it relates to hiring in the future.
Yep. And then the final one that we're looking at is specifically AI, right? The big AI situation. I think for a lot of people, especially for small business, it's kind of what does this mean to me? What do I do with this? Why is AI such a big deal? How is it something that I can tap into specifically? And I would say there's kind of three main areas that we're going to kind of focus on today. The first one is tapping skills that you don't have. AI obviously is growing, it's getting better and better. And there's lots of tools out there that allow you to tap into that maybe you don't have time for, and your skills are better used in other places and that you can use AI for instead. One of those things especially would be, say, content. If you're busy, you're running around, you're doing your thing, but you know that you need to get that social post out there. Some of those AI content creators, ChatGPT, etc., there are just numerous ways that you can put in information and it will spit out to you something that you can use perfect for your business, your needs in that moment. The next thing would be improving your customer service. Chat boxes are not a new thing. Chat services are not a new thing as far as customer service, whether it's just a regular website, whether it's an e-commerce website, etc. However, the improvement on those specific softwares has gone off. It's off the charts now as far as its usefulness, its intuitiveness. You don't have to worry about a chatbot just spitting back, "I'm sorry, I don't have that answer." So I feel like chat box software has improved because of AI. So if you have maybe tried to use it before and it hasn't been so hot for you in the past, I would say take a second look now. You can get really deep with these chat bots specific to your business and what you have to offer. There are numerous tools out there and softwares that you can plug into your website. Obviously, if you have questions, we're here to answer those. But again, Google's a great resource. There's numerous ones out there that you can kind of take a look at. Different price points as well. Whatever your comfort level is, I bet you it exists. And then finally with AI, kind of touched on this a little bit with content creation. But one of the things that is a struggle for many of our clients is updating their website, keeping their social feeds update, basically that content monster that Google and SEO is constantly demanding so that you can help stay on top of those search results and in front of your customer. AI, I know that people are kind of playing around with this right now, but it is going to become a leading tool to help you do that. It's going to allow you to back some time off, spend time where it's going to be more necessary for you to be in. And your chat, whether it's your chat bot, it's your chat creation, whether it's chat beat. So take a second look at AI. Don't be afraid of it. Dabble in it. Do some Google searches of your own. Figure out how it could apply to your business. Again, we're here to answer questions. There's so many resources out there. Read some articles about it too. You can glean a lot of information and get to that comfort level as far as what you decide to dabble in and how you decide to use it for your business.
So I think the best approach here for the small business owners out there right now, again, is look at how you can leverage it as efficiency. Everything needs a personal touch. We get that. It's not going to solve every problem. But again, rather than being afraid, we always have to look at change and disruption as an opportunity as a small business owner. So is this going to change things in society? Absolutely. Are there going to be some things that are going to make employment challenging for some specific types of jobs? Yes. As an owner, we need to look at these changes as an opportunity to add efficiency, like Holly has mentioned, and take advantage of that whenever we can.
All right. So we have one user question today, and that is on the topic of Facebook scamming through Messenger. It says, how do you know whether a scamming message you get through Messenger is legitimate or not? That is a great question. In fact, this is something that's been coming up over and over and over, even with our own clients. It is hard to tell. They make it look very official when it comes in. At least some of them do. One of the first things you can look for immediately is the source. Okay. Generally, always within that message, buried somewhere or in the middle, is what I've been finding, is a link you can click on. Never click on that link. That's exactly what they want you to do. It's a phishing link. Other things you can look for are typos. There's always typos or broken sentences, things that either it looks almost like an AI has spit out or someone who does not speak English in particular, as far as messaging that comes in the US. So those are telltale signs right there. Just know too that Facebook isn't going to reach out to you this way. So if you see something come in as a message and it's high alert and it makes it sound very urgent, in fact, sometimes even says urgent, your account's going to be closed down. No, immediately, not legit, okay? If you have any questions, one thing you can do immediately, you can literally copy and paste that message, and I wouldn't mess around too much with that message. Don't click on the link again, but you can put in the header of that message into Google and it will tell you immediately whether that's a scam message or not. Facebook also provides ample, when I say Facebook, I mean Meta. So that's including Instagram, which is where we see a lot of this happening right now. They provide a lot of information about what is legit conversation coming directly from directly from Facebook, and how they will actually contact you if there is truly an issue. And it is not the way these scammers are coming in over Messenger. Good question.
Great advice. Yep. This is something that we see happening almost on a daily basis, and it's usually always to the private messages through their inbox from Facebook. So, yep, just be watching for those things. If you have questions, you can always email us, but I think those tips are really helpful in just watching and paying attention. And as always, the golden rule is don't click on any links.
Exactly. All right. Well, thanks for listening to Make Sense. We are husband and wife team. We're trying to help you, the consumer, make sense of the world of digital marketing. So, Jason, maybe let everybody know how they can reach out to us, or if they want to follow us on socials, what those are.
So the best thing to do, I would say, is go to our website. It's GenR8 Marketing, GEN, letter R, number 8, marketing.com. and that has access to all our links to our socials, YouTube, podcast, the whole bit. That's probably the best way.
Yep.
Thanks so much.